My name is Sarah, I'm 27 years old, and my pregnant sister and parents tried to steal my car from my driveway while I was sleeping because I refused to just give it to them. Before I tell you how my own sister ended up in handcuffs, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It didn't begin with the screech of tires on asphalt or the cold, impersonal click of handcuffs. It began quietly, as most betrayals do, not with a bang, but with a series of whispers that slowly eroded the foundation of what I thought was my family. The final, brazen act of theft wasn't an isolated incident, it was the grand finale of a lifetime of being the designated giver, the responsible older sister whose boundaries were seen as mere suggestions, easily erased by the tears of my younger sister, Maya. You have to understand about my car. It was a 2010 Honda Civic, nothing fancy, but it was the first truly significant thing I had ever owned. It was more than just metal, glass, and rubber, it was a four-wheeled monument to my own hard work. I'd bought it myself after graduating, with money scraped together from a soul-crushing entry-level job that demanded 60 hours a week. I'd spent weekends learning how to do basic maintenance, my knuckles scraped and stained with grease. I paid it off 3 years early. That car, that simple, reliable Honda, was my declaration of independence. It was my safety net, my guarantee that no matter what happened, I could get myself out of a bad situation. That feeling was more important than ever, because a recent layoff had shredded my career, replacing a steady salary with the precarious hustle of part-time work. My savings were dwindling, and that paid-off car was the one solid thing in a life that felt like quicksand. So, when my mother's voice, syrupy with a false sweetness that always signaled a coming storm, crackled through my phone, asking me to come over for a peacemaking dinner, I should have known better. But a small, hopelessly optimistic part of me, a part one thought I had buried long ago, dared to hope. That hope was a fool's errand. The climax of their campaign happened in my parents' front yard. I was standing there, the screen door still sighing shut behind me, holding a large box of diapers. A peace offering. My mother had lured me into the garage with a request to help carry some baby items out to Maya's car, a gesture of goodwill I was hesitant but willing to make. That's when I heard it, the familiar, smooth purr of my Civic's engine. A sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. For a long, surreal second, my brain refused to compute. It was a glitch in reality, a scene from a movie that made no sense. The box of diapers slipped from my numb fingers, the plastic crinkling loudly in the sudden, ringing silence. I stumbled out of the garage and into the driveway just in time to see the taillights of my Honda, my car, glowing like malevolent red eyes as it reversed into the street. Maya was behind the wheel. She wasn't looking at me with guilt or shame. She was smiling, a tight, triumphant smirk that twisted my stomach into a knot of ice. A raw, guttural sound tore from my throat. I'm sure I looked insane, a wild woman chasing after her own car on foot down the driveway. Maya! Stop! I screamed, but the word was swallowed by the engine's hum. She didn't even glance back. As she shifted into drive, she casually rolled down the window and yelled over her shoulder, "Thanks for coming around, sis. I knew you'd do the right thing." Then she hit the gas, and my symbol of independence, my piece of solid ground, disappeared down the block. I was left standing in the middle of the street, my chest heaving, the stench of exhaust fumes filling my lungs. My mom came scurrying out of the house, her hands fluttering like frightened birds. "Don't worry, honey, this is better for everyone," she babbled, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. "We'll figure out a payment for the car. We'll pay you back somehow, just please don't be mad." Her words were not an apology. They were a justification. They were the verbal pat on the head you give a child who doesn't understand what's best for them. It felt like a physical blow. I looked at my mother, the woman who had taught me to be honest and fair, and I saw a co-conspirator, an accessory to a crime against her own daughter. I didn't scream at her. The rage was too deep, too cold for that. A terrifying calm washed over me, chilling me to the bone. Without a word, I turned my back on her, pulled up my phone, and watched as her name lit up the screen with an incoming call. I declined it. I opened the Uber app. As I stood on the curb, waiting for a stranger to come rescue me, one thought echoed in the silent, screaming void of my mind: this isn't a family dispute. This is Grand Theft Auto. The ride home was a blur. The city lights smeared past the window, but I didn't see them. I was watching a movie of my own life, a reel of all the smaller thefts and betrayals that had led to this moment. It was never one big thing, it was a lifetime of 1,000 paper cuts. I remembered when I was 16, proudly showing my parents the first $500 I had saved for my college fund. A week later, Maya, then 13, lost the money she was supposed to use for a school trip to Europe. There was a week of drama, of tears and slammed doors. Then my parents sat me down. "Honey," my dad had said, his eyes full of paternal disappointment, "it's just $500. You can earn it back. This trip is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your sister." My college fund was gone. There was no discussion of Maya paying it back, no talk of them replacing it. My future was simply less important than her present. This toxic dynamic poisoned everything. I was the responsible one, so I was expected to be a bottomless well of understanding and sacrifice. Maya was the baby, the fragile one, so she needed to be endlessly coddled. When her ancient Ford would inevitably break down, spewing smoke on the side of the highway, who did she call? Not AAA. Me. I'd have to invent an excuse to leave my job early, cancel dates, and drive across town to rescue her. "Just this once, Sarah, I swear, I'll get it fixed for good this time," she'd promise, her eyes wide and innocent. And like a fool, I'd fall for it, every single time. The Uber dropped me at my curb, right in the empty space where my car should have been. The sight of it, so stark and vacant, solidified my resolve. I walked inside and immediately called my aunt, my mom's sister, the family's unofficial truth-teller. I recounted the evening's events, my voice flat, robotic. I was past emotion, I was in a state of clinical shock. She sighed, a long, weary sound that carried the weight of years. "Oh, Sarah. I'm so sorry. Your mother, she has a blind spot the size of Texas when it comes to Maya. She always has. She probably thinks she was helping, that you were just being difficult. She likely even convinced your father of the same. You know how she is, she's probably already thinking about how this will affect Maya's portion of the inheritance." Her words didn't fix anything, but they were a lifeline. They confirmed I wasn't the crazy one. This wasn't normal family behavior. This was a profound, systemic dysfunction. The final confrontation had been building for weeks, but it truly ignited at that disastrous Sunday dinner. The air in my parents' dining room was thick with the smell of roast chicken and resentment. Maya, 7 months pregnant and radiating an aura of supreme entitlement, had been complaining about her car for a solid 10 minutes. Then, she turned her attention to me, her fork poised mid-air. "You know, Sarah," she said, her tone deceptively casual, "you could just let me have your car." I choked on my water, then laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "Excuse me? I'm sorry, I thought you were serious for a second." Her smile vanished. "I am serious. Pregnant women shouldn't have to drive unsafe cars. It's dangerous for the baby. Your Civic would be perfect." The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. I felt a hot, prickling sensation crawl up my neck. "Maya, absolutely not. This is my car. I need it for job interviews, for my life. I'm not just giving it to you." And just like that, the trap sprang. My mother was the first to pounce. "You hardly even drive these days, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with disapproval. "You're only working part-time. A family is supposed to support each other." It was a coordinated ambush. Maya's husband, Jake, leaned forward, trying to look earnest and concerned. "For the baby's sake, Sarah. Think about your nephew. We could even let you borrow Maya's old junker when you really need a car. It's a fair trade." The sheer, unmitigated gall of it left me breathless. They weren't just asking for a favor, they were presenting a demand as if it were a reasonable business transaction. I finally found my voice, and it was colder than I intended. No. I am sorry you're having car trouble, but my car is not the solution. And for the record, that is not a fair trade. That was Maya's cue. The floodgates opened. Huge, theatrical tears welled up in her eyes and streamed down her cheeks. I don't think you understand how scary it is, she wailed, clutching her swollen belly as if she were having a contraction. To worry every time you turn the key? If you really loved your nephew, you'd want me to have a safe vehicle for him. That was it. The manipulation was so blatant, so shameless, it was almost insulting. The anger that had been simmering inside me for years finally boiled over, but it came out as ice. Your baby's safety is your responsibility, and Jake's, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, each word a carefully placed stone. I will drive you to any and every doctor's appointment. I will drive you to the hospital myself when you go into labor. I will lend you my car in a true, life-or-death emergency. But I am not handing over my property, my security, to you permanently. The discussion is over. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. My mother's face was a mask of cold fury. You are being unbelievably selfish, she hissed. My dad, who had been a silent statue throughout the exchange, finally moved. He just shook his head at me, a slow, deliberate gesture of profound disappointment. His silence was louder than her screaming. It was his verdict, I was guilty. I pushed my chair back from the table, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Supporting her is one thing, I said, my gaze sweeping over all of them. Demanding I cripple myself financially is another. You're asking me to set myself on fire to keep her warm. No. I'm not doing that. I walked out of that house with their condemnation burning into my back. I felt like a villain in a story they had all agreed upon. But as I drove home, the anger began to curdle into a grim resolve. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as an obstacle to be removed, a resource to be plundered. And that night, I knew with a chilling certainty that they were not done. Not by a long shot. The days following that dinner were an exercise in psychological warfare. The silence from my family was deafening, more menacing than any argument. It was the quiet of a predator stalking its prey. I felt a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety in my veins. I started parking my car at a friend's house overnight, feeling like a paranoid fugitive in my own life. My friend, bless her heart, didn't think I was crazy. Get a security camera, Sarah, she had urged. A cheap one. Just point it at your driveway. Trust your gut. I ordered one online that day. It arrived on a Friday. I installed it that afternoon. It was a small, discreet camera, barely noticeable under the eaves of my porch. The very next morning, it paid for itself. I was jolted awake just after dawn, not by an alarm, but by a sound that didn't belong, the low, guttural rumble of a heavy truck engine, accompanied by the rhythmic, clanking sound of metal on metal. My heart leaped into my throat. I scrambled out of bed and fumbled for my phone, pulling up the live feed from the new camera. My blood turned to ice. There, in the grainy, pre-dawn light, was my dad's pickup truck, a car hauler hitched to the back, parked at the end of my driveway. My dad was methodically hooking winch cables to the front axle of my Honda. My mom and Maya were standing on the sidewalk, directing him with hushed, urgent gestures. I didn't even stop to put on shoes. I threw on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt and tore out my front door, my bare feet slapping against the cold concrete. What the hell are you doing? I screamed, my voice a raw, ragged thing. They froze like startled deer, their faces a comical mixture of shock and guilt. My mom scurried toward me, her hands raised in that infuriatingly placating gesture. Sweetie, please, just listen, we can explain. But I was already dialing 911, my fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I held it up, the screen glowing in the dim light, and made sure they could see it. If you don't unhook my car and get off my property in the next 10 seconds, I am reporting a grand theft auto in progress. The sight of the phone, the mention of the police, finally broke the spell of their entitlement. My dad, looking genuinely horrified, dropped the winch cable as if it were red hot. "Now, Sarah, there's no need for that," he stammered, his face pale. "We're your family." Maya, however, was incandescent with rage at being thwarted. "Why are you being so dramatic?" she shrieked from the safety of the sidewalk. "We knew you wouldn't just let us do this. That's why we tried to do it the easy way. I need this car." The easy way. The words hung in the air, obscene in their honesty. The easy way was to commit a felony against me while I slept. I marched past my mom, my entire body trembling with adrenaline, and began fumbling with the heavy straps on my wheels. "Because it's my car!" I yelled, my voice cracking with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You are literally trying to steal from me. What is fundamentally wrong with you people?" That was the moment the last thread of my old life snapped. The sight of my own father, my protector, acting as a repo man for my spoiled sister, shattered any lingering illusions I had. This wasn't a family squabble. This was a hostile takeover. Faced with an imminent 911 call, my dad finally capitulated. He unhooked the car, his movements jerky and angry, muttering about how impossible I was being. But as they were preparing to leave, Maya stormed up my driveway until she was right in my face, her belly a physical barrier between us. "I already told everyone you were giving me the car," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "I even planned my baby shower at your house. You're making me look like a liar to Jake's parents. They already think my family is trash after their messy divorce." I just stared at her, my mind reeling. They hadn't just planned to steal my car, they had planned to throw a party in my home, without my permission, to celebrate the theft. A party where I was presumably supposed to stand there and smile, handing over the keys as the grand finale. The sheer, breathtaking narcissism of it was a thing to behold. After that failed heist, the Cold War escalated. My mom launched a full-scale guilt offensive, leaving long, tearful voicemails about how my selfishness was putting my pregnant sister's health at risk. Then, a week later, came the Trojan horse, the invitation to the peacemaking dinner. The one I stupidly accepted. The one that ended with me standing alone in the street, watching my life drive away. As soon as the Uber dropped me back at my house, at the gaping, empty space in my driveway, the cold, crystalline calm took over. I walked inside, my movements precise, almost robotic. I went to the mantelpiece and looked at an old family photo, me and Maya as kids, a gap-toothed grin on my face, her arms wrapped around my neck. A lifetime ago, before the poison set in. A single, hot tear of grief for that lost girl, for that lost family, rolled down my cheek. I was mourning a life I thought I had. Then I wiped it away with the back of my hand. That family was dead. It was time to bury it. I picked up my phone. My hand was perfectly steady. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Hello," I said, my own voice even and clear, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "I need to report a stolen vehicle." I gave her my name, my address, the make, model, and license plate of my car. "Do you have any idea who might have taken it?" she asked. I took a deep breath. This was it. The point of no return. "Yes," I said. "It was my sister. Her name is Maya." I gave the dispatcher her full name, her physical description, and the address she was most likely driving to. After I hung up, the deluge began. My phone erupted in a cacophony of calls and texts. My mother, screaming and crying, leaving a voicemail where she called me a monster who was trying to kill my sister's baby. My dad, texting me over and over, "Please call this off, Sarah. Don't destroy our family over a car." Destroy our family? They had detonated it themselves and were now blaming me for the fallout. I didn't answer a single call or text. I silenced my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the silence of my house. They had made their choice. Now, I was making mine. A few hours later, a call came through from a blocked number. I knew who it was. I answered. It was Maya, calling from jail. She was sobbing hysterically, her words tumbling over each other in a torrent of pleas and accusations. She begged me to have mercy, for the baby's sake. Then, in the next breath, she was spitting venom, calling me a heartless, jealous bitch who was risking my nephew's life over a stupid piece of metal. I listened for about 30 seconds, long enough to confirm the depth of her delusion, and then I hung up. The police called back a little while later. They had located the car. They had pulled Maya over on the highway. She had tried to play the innocent victim, claiming it was all a big misunderstanding, that I had, of course, given her the car. But the registration was in my name, and the active stolen vehicle report was on their screen. They had arrested her for grand theft auto. "Ma'am," the officer on the phone said, his voice professional and detached, "she is in custody. We need to confirm if you intend to press charges." I stood up and walked back to the mantelpiece. I looked at that photo of the two little girls who used to be sisters. I felt a surge of protective anger for the little girl who was me, the one who was taught that her value was in how much she could give, how much she could endure. She deserved better. I deserved better. "Yes, officer," I said, and my voice rang with a finality that was both terrifying and liberating. "I do." That single word was an earthquake. It shattered the foundations of my old life and cleared the ground for a new one. The next day, after I paid the fee to get my car out of the impound lot, it was filthy inside and the gas tank was on empty. Naturally, the aftershocks began. My dad showed up at my house. I refused to let him inside. We spoke through the locked screen door, a barrier that felt deeply, painfully appropriate. He looked haggard. He pleaded with me to think about the family, about the baby, about Maya's future. "She's learned her lesson now," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "You got the car back. Can't we just put this behind us?" "Put it behind us?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "You came to my home before dawn with a car hauler. You stood by and watched while she drove away with my property. Where was your concern for family then? Where was your concern for me? You don't get to burn my house down and then ask me to forget the ashes." He had no answer. He just turned and walked away, looking older and smaller than I had ever seen him. The next assault came a few days later. Maya's husband, Jake, appeared on my doorstep, and he brought a friend. A big, beefy friend who stood behind him with his arms crossed, a silent, menacing statue. I opened the door just a crack, my phone already recording audio in my pocket. Jake tried to play the reasonable negotiator. He even offered to pay me for the car. $200 a month, he said, as if he were offering a generous settlement. "We can put it in writing. It's a good deal." "No," I said flatly. "The car is not for sale. Please leave my property." His friendly mask slipped. "You're making this harder than it has to be," he snapped. "You already got her arrested. Don't you think you've punished her enough?" His friend took a step forward, a clear attempt at intimidation. "You know," he said, his voice a low growl, "a criminal charge could be a real problem in a custody hearing down the line. You wouldn't want to be the reason your own nephew gets taken away from his mom, would you?" It was a vile, calculated threat. But I wasn't the scared girl from the Sunday dinner anymore. I looked him straight in the eye. "Are you threatening me?" I asked, my voice ringing with cold clarity. "Are you suggesting that if I don't drop the charges for a felony your wife committed, you will somehow use that against her in a custody battle and blame me for it? Thank you for making that so clear. I have this entire conversation recorded. I'm sure the detective, and my new lawyer, will find it very interesting." The color drained from Jake's face. He grabbed his friend's arm and practically dragged him off my porch. As they scurried away, the friend called me a crazy bitch over his shoulder. I just locked my door, my heart pounding not with fear, but with the exhilarating rush of victory. I immediately sent the audio file to the detective and filed a harassment report. I was no longer playing defense. I was on the attack. One of the conditions of Maya's bail was a no-contact order with me. The silence was a blessing. But the manipulation, I soon learned, could be outsourced. 2 months later, my nephew was born. A healthy baby boy. I found out through a mass email my mom sent to the entire extended family, an email I was clearly and maliciously meant to see. Tucked in with the saccharine announcement and the professionally shot photos of the newborn was a personal message from Maya. It read, "I hope you're happy. Your nephew and I almost died because you forced me to keep driving that piece of junk car. I went into labor early from all the stress you caused, and the car broke down on the way to the hospital. We barely made it. If my son had been hurt, or worse, his blood would have been on your hands. But don't worry, we're fine. I'll just be sure to tell him as he grows up that his auntie couldn't care less if he lived or died." I read the email, a masterpiece of passive-aggressive fiction. I looked at the picture of the innocent baby, already being wielded as a weapon in his mother's toxic crusade. And I felt nothing. The space inside me where guilt and anger used to live was just empty. It was the final, pathetic gasp of a dying monster. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I simply forwarded the email to my lawyer with a one-line note for the file. Then, I went to my contacts and, one by one, I blocked them. My mother. My father. My sister. I systematically, methodically, erased them from my life. The truth, as it turns out, is a stubborn thing. My aunt, horrified by the email which she had also received, began to set the record straight. I sent her, and a few other trusted relatives, the full story, complete with the video of the attempted theft from my security camera and the audio recording of Jake's threat. The story spread like wildfire through the family grapevine. The carefully constructed narrative of poor, pregnant Maya and her cruel, selfish sister crumbled to dust. Suddenly, I was getting calls of support from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, apologizing for ever doubting me. They were furious, not at me, but at the decades of deceit and manipulation I had endured. I don't know what the final outcome of the legal case will be. With a new baby, the prosecutor might offer her a plea deal that keeps her out of jail. But in the end, it doesn't matter. I've already won. My victory wasn't in a courtroom. It was in my own heart. I landed a fantastic new full-time job, a significant promotion from what I was doing before, with a great salary. I'm rebuilding my savings and my confidence. I installed a state-of-the-art security system at my house. The other day, I was out in the driveway, washing my Honda. The sun was warm on my back, and the car gleamed under the soap and water. I looked at my reflection in the polished hood. I saw a woman who looked a little tired, a little sad around the eyes, but for the first time in a long time, she looked whole. She looked free. I lost a family, but I found myself. I got in my car, the engine humming its familiar, reliable tune. And I just drove, with no particular destination in mind, enjoying the simple, profound feeling of the open road in front of me, a future that was entirely, completely, and finally, my own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I feel like it needed to be told. I'm curious, have any of you ever had to make a difficult choice to stand up for yourself against your own family? Let me know in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel out.